fantastic to be able to talk again 1 year on since the last time we had a discussion, which was, if you remember, sat in central lobby in the Houses of Parliament, because we've been at an event which happened to coincide with International Women's Day. And I know that I can't believe that feels like a year ago. It feels like more like 3 weeks ago. But what's been happening in Essex on the levelling up agenda since the last time we spoke?
Yes, you're right. That has gone very, very quickly. So we've been really busy, and you'll be pleased to know that we've been carrying on, what I think was for the first year some really positive work. So, you would have heard me talking about our plans around literacy and numeracy last year. So we've certainly really embedded now some of our literacy corners that are in all of our libraries and the associated outreach work. And we've expanded that further to include some STEM Lego opportunities, again, run from the libraries, and really targeting where those opportunities are. Our year of numbers and our year of reading has had a fantastic impact as well. And we've worked, again, in a targeted way, but very closely with some of the schools, and also thinking about what that means for preschoolers around oracy and literacy, numeracy, and making sure that they have the tools that they need before they even start school. So it's been, a really busy last 12 months, and I've got a number of examples that I can talk to you about as well.
Let's get onto those in just a moment. But first of all, Louise, it's a tough time out there for local government, and I know councils everywhere in the country are struggling. So how's this gone down internally? I mean, has this been yet another thing that the council has to do on top of everything else, or have you found it easy to integrate within the council's other activities?
So I think it's fair to say that first year it was still, as hard as we were working to try and get it across the organisation and sort of embedded more with partners, it was quite tough going. But this past year has definitely seen us come together much more naturally across portfolios as cabinet members, with partners inside and outside of the council, and that's been really good. And you're right, there's major challenges out there for everybody, and obviously in these times of having to watch what we're spending, and thinking about some of the additional challenges in terms of what we have to take on as county councils, it would be very easy to just see this as an extra. But we have been very clear from the beginning that it was a priority of ours as an administration. And of course, people are starting to see some of the benefits of that now. And it's being able to link up both within the council, but also recognising that, some of the people who are receiving the other services, particularly in children's and families, that they are also recipients of some of these, really good ideas. So, the Holiday Activity and Food Programme, which is the national scheme that's funded by the government for the main school holidays, we put additional funding in to include the half term as well. And we've really worked on our send offer there. So there's been some really good examples of how some of the work that we've done, which technically has come through the Levelling Up programme, but it's much broader than that, and it reaches some of those more vulnerable families that maybe some of the other services are dealing with as well.
And one of the challenges for local government is always how to have local priorities, but in a system which is often driven by national priorities. And I remember when I was a council leader in the North East, the challenges around the scale of social care, for example, meant that there wasn't a lot of brain power to do much else, certainly in terms of creative thinking. And it's really impressive to see the range of things that you've been doing over the last year. Tell me a bit more about this community supermarket, because I'm quite fascinated by that.
So the community supermarkets are really born out of the idea of, we've got the growth of food banks. How do we move people on from food banks to being able to be more independent, choose their own shopping, pay for it, but recognising that there's an affordability issue there. So the community supermarkets, the design is that there will ultimately be one in every borough, city district around the county come this spring. But we've worked with voluntary groups and in some cases existing food banks for them to either help us deliver it or certainly to advise and signpost. We've done a lot of work with Feeding Britain as well, which has been really instrumental in terms of some of the provision of the goods to get us going. And the idea is that the community supermarket, in some cases it's mobile, some cases it's in a community hall or a church hall, and you can go in, you sign up, and you do your shopping like you would normally. but everything is at a reduced price. It's about 30 to 40% cheaper. And the feedback we've had has been really positive, with people, talking about having their own dignity, that they can choose their own shopping. They're not just handed a bag. And it goes much further actually than just food, because there's the power of a cup of tea and a biscuit and being able to have a chat and make friends, or be signposted if there's additional support that's needed. We opened our 7th just a couple of weeks ago. So as I say, we were going to have one in every Borough City district come the spring. So just a few more to go.
It's fascinating, I mean, I think you put your finger on something there, because the number of people who don't like to admit that they have a problem and don't want a handout, but they might need a help with something and a hand up. And I think doing it in that way, so it doesn't feel like charity, it doesn't feel like patronizing. It feels as though you're just helping people with some of the things that they're going through at the moment. That means they can be as normal as possible about it. I think that's actually really empowering, and also much more sustainable in the long term.
Absolutely. And that's exactly it. And then it was, it's really interesting actually speaking to some of the people who work in this field. So from Feeding Britain, where exactly to your point around hand up rather than hand out, how do you create that sustainability for the organization that's delivering it, but how also do you start to empower people to be independent and have choice over their own lives? I mean, that for me is ultimately got to be what it's about. And it is that natural bridge between food banks, which should be about crisis management at that particular moment in time. How do you then encourage people and support people into the place where they can, as I say, do their own shopping, and yes, they do pay for it at the end of it, but it's substantially cheaper.
And when we first started talking about the Levelling Up agenda in Essex, and using the purpose goals as a bit of a framework for that, there was a sense that those are a huge agenda and we needed to think about how to help prioritize it. And one of the things that I know is often overlooked in this agenda is the digital divide. And I know you've done some really interesting stuff around tackling that in the last year as well.
We have, and it became apparent really very quickly that so much of our life, just as we are now, is spent using a digital device, having access to data. And of course, if you have that, you take that for granted and go about your daily life. If you don't have that, it can be a fundamental disadvantage, particularly in a very simple example, when it comes to doing homework, or if you're an older student, you need to do some research. Not being able to have a device and get online is today, it is a significant disadvantage, and it is very difficult. So we've given out just over 6,000, or 6,500 now, I think it is, actual devices to students and to vulnerable families who don't have that provision. But we've also taken it a step further, and we've looked at the data as well. So encouraging people to either get on social tariffs for broadband, and in some cases actually giving them access to some data. And that's been really instrumental in helping people back into employment. So I was at an advice centre actually just last week, where they support people who are looking for work, and of course being able to make applications, so much of that now is done online. So just to give them the 3 months, 6 months access to that has been quite transformative in some cases, and it has led to them then moving into employment.
And there's a similarity with this community supermarkets idea here, which is about enable people. Don't do things for other people. Don't take away their dignity or their ability to choose, but help them to do it more effectively. And it also, I think, has the potential to save lots of money, because I know from my previous time in politics, there's always a conversation about how quickly can you move to digital modes of communication and channels of contact across public services. It's quite expensive to run several different types of engaging at the same time. This sounds to me like quite a neat solution here.
Yes, I mean, I just think it's an obvious thing to do. You can't say to somebody that they have to apply for work and they need to get into employment if they haven't got access to be able to even apply for the job in the first place. So, there are some simple things, I think, and this for me is very much around what the broader programme's about. It is empowering people to give them the tools, whether that is something as simple as, there's some data access and now you can go and apply for the job, or if it's helping them get onto a training course and again then building up their own skills, which they can then take out into the working world. But this is all about empowerment, whether that's for an individual, whether it's for a particular community or society more generally. That fundamentally is what underpins the whole programme.
And speaking of training and skills development, one of the things that I know was potentially going to be part of the plan this year was about training people in electric vehicles. How's that happened, or has that happened?
So that's gone really well. So we launched it in Harlow. It recognises that there was both a demand and also a huge opportunity. You know, it's a big growth market for the future, electric vehicles, and of course how you service them is very different rather to how you service regular cars. So we worked with the college there and helped to fund some training places to enable people to get trained up in terms of how they can service those vehicles, but also it supported some of the local businesses. Some of the garages were putting people on the course because they were obviously seeing an uptick in terms of the demand from the public as more people buy the vehicles. It's that circular relationship around it all. So that's been really positive. And it's really just just one example, I suppose, around how upskilling and supporting people to have the right skills, just how powerful that can be. And that, to my mind, has to be driven by business. Business needs to be saying what the skills are that they need. And then I think the role of whether it's the council or the state more broadly is about how we respond to that. How do we encourage people to, we have to provide the places for them to develop the skills and the funding that goes with that, but also making the link, the on the ground link between the businesses and the individuals, and particularly young people, so they know what opportunities are out there.
And I think the skills agenda and what the future of our skills provision is as a country is one of the points of connection between the conversations that we have around society and how healthy society is and how people got opportunities to progress and do the best they possibly can, and how effective our economy is in terms of productivity and whether we've got the right people for the kind of jobs that we're going to need in the future. And the skills agenda is one of the things that absolutely connects those two different conversations around the same issue, which is that I think we need to move away from simply national skills planning and enable a much more fruitful local conversation, because that's where you can do the joining up. And it sounds to me as though that's in effect what's happening on the ground in Essex.
It's certainly what we're trying to do. We have the Greater Essex Business Board now, which has our leading employers on from across the county, and we've tried to make the link. So we've got a really good scheme that's underway with Forwards actually at the moment. They've obviously got a very large footprint here in the county, and they're doing some of their mentoring programme and angling it towards Basildon and Canvey Island, and they are two areas that are within our Levelling Up programme. So it's about how we can work with business. In many cases, certainly the larger businesses already have some very strong CSR work, and it's how do we take that corporate responsibility, the social commitment that they've made, and get it to support the work that we're doing and how we've identified where that demand and that need is. So that's it's a really good example there, I think, of how business and local government can link up. But actually, the other end of the spectrum, only last week I was talking to a husband and wife, and they run a small business, and they are keen to get into schools and talk to young people about opportunities for future careers in marketing. And again, it's part of how they feel they can put back into the community and make sure that young people are being made aware of what those opportunities are and where the skills gap is. And that will look very different around the country. That along with the opportunities. So if you look at a county as diverse and as complex as Essex, it's a very big county geographically. We've got the free ports, we've got the airports, we've obviously got the close proximity to the capital, and we've got very rural areas as well. So the opportunities and the challenges are very different here to where they, what they may be if you took central Newcastle or somewhere like that. It would be very different. And I think the real benefit is if you can link in with those local employers, understand what it is that they need, and we've done a lot of work across the different sectors to see how we can support them to develop and to grow their own workforce.
If you think back to the event that we did in the Houses of Parliament almost a year ago now, one of the things that I was really struck by, and it was a quite small room, so it felt a bit crowded. I was really struck by the sense of Team Essex in the room. You didn't just have council leaders and the district councils. You didn't just have your MPs. You had quite a lot of senior business figures as well, and the voluntary community sector and young people. And I thought it was a really impressive demonstration about how if a council works to align people around a shared set of priorities, in a way, regardless of what that organisation is doing in its normal life, that can actually be a really effective way of making progress on some of these deep-seated challenges that we've really not tackled as a country for decades.
Absolutely. And, I say to business, I will talk about spreading opportunity and you will talk about growing your talent pool. They are actually the same thing. You need more people with the skills that your business requires. And we want to give more opportunities to people who maybe don't have it at the moment. So, how do you marry the two up? And this cannot be, and it never has been, about a local authority project, because we do that already. And that, in some cases, is absolutely the right thing to do. But if we're really going to move this whole agenda forward, it has to be about that partnership throughout. And it's not just public-private, it's also thinking about all of the different partners that we have within the sectors. That does include local government, of course, but it's also the health service, it's also the police, it's also the schools. And then there's the fundamental role around how you can bring all of that together locally for business. If ultimately it's about empowering people, upskilling them, giving them the access and the opportunity to good jobs, a lot of the other social issues, I firmly believe, will take care of themselves because people will be empowered. The data is there. If you're in employment, it does make a difference.
And it's really interesting that now that I'm no longer involved directly as a council leader, and I've been doing a bit more work around the country and getting a bit of a sense of how other councils approach some of these issues. My approach in Newcastle was actually very similar to yours. The council is a leader of place, but not necessarily delivering everything. And it's really interesting how many places actually have a bit of a kind of mindset that, well, if it wasn't invented here in the council, it doesn't have any warrant or merit to it. And so it feels to me as though what Essex is doing in this space is genuinely not just pioneering, but actually reinventing the role of local government for the future at a time when councils can't do everything for everybody. So you have to be really quite strategic in how you approach these issues.
Absolutely. And it's not just about services. As a council, of course, we deliver services. We know that's what we do. This is absolutely about place. And I think it is about being ambitious. It is about being very open to others, not just others having ideas, but also identifying some of those opportunities to tap in. So I gave you the Fords example earlier. They're already doing CSR work. We're not inventing that for them. They're already doing it, and with a very strong program. But it was through having those conversations with them that they recognised and we recognised that we could come together and actually really join forces. So they're doing some of the mentoring work, as I say, in Basildon and in Canvey Island. Alongside that, we've also got a really strong third sector in Canvey around some of the youth work. So again, what is it that we can do? What's our role? Sometimes it is actually, doing the doing. Other times it's just bringing people together. It's being that convener, or it's influencing, it's suggesting. And you actually, if you were to tot up everything that's then happening, and I clearly say everything that's happening rather than everything that you're doing, because it's not the same list. Everything that's happening, you need to be aware, and it's just opening the mind and being just more open to what else is out there, and recognizing that we don't only hold the cards to make this different and better, that it's really important that we all work together.
There's a sort of middle ground, isn't there, between, on one hand, everything has to go through the council, and the council is the sole arbiter of whether something is good or bad, at one extreme of the spectrum, right the way through to, well, anybody can just do anything that makes a difference, and it doesn't really matter whether it's connected to anything else or not, because it's quite hard to measure, though, at that end of the spectrum. And it feels like you've found a really powerful balance between the role of the council in terms of leading and enabling and shaping and helping people to prioritise, but also challenging others to bring their focus and their resources to the table as part of that wider conversation.
Yes, and the community supermarkets are actually a really good example of that, because I was very clear when we started this that this was about startup funding. This is not about us funding the community supermarkets for the next 5 years. So part of the bid did look at the question of sustainability, and it's amazing actually how you can unlock not just funding from elsewhere, but actually really goodwill and connections of others. And the community supermarket, as an example again, that started in Langdon, was one day a week, or one morning a week, in the community centres hall. it then grew, and they've actually got a mobile vehicle now as well. So they go into other parts of Basildon who you maybe geographically can't get to the centre quite so easily. Now, that wasn't something that we did as a council. It was something that was born out of the volunteers and the organisations that were working with us. We were able to support them in that, but that wouldn't have happened without them. That was their doing. So I think it's a really good example of how, you know, the role of the council can just unlock something, and then that something can mushroom into something really quite special.
And I think, as I was saying just a few minutes ago, I think that is really reinventing and reimagining what local government's role is in the future. So looking forward, I mean, I know we've talked about this as a Levelling Up project, but Levelling Up has become associated with the Conservatives politically, and we're starting to talk about barriers to opportunity as a way of trying to depoliticize the language a bit so that it doesn't feel, I mean, I know you and I come from different parts of the political spectrum, but you know, we're mature enough to be able to understand it's about what we do rather than how we describe it. But yeah, language is important. And I know Labour is talking about opportunity for all. So what do you think the next year is going to hold in terms of what Essex focuses on, prioritises on? And have you any thoughts to how to make this genuinely sustainable after the general election as well as over the next few months?
It's a really good question, and it's one that actually we've been having internally around, you know, have got a general election this year, whatever the outcome of that, where does that leave the programme? And I've said, you know, exactly on the course to which we are on now. You're right, language is important, of course it is. But in actual fact, we are all talking about the same thing. I gave the example between the businesses and us earlier, and you know, whether you're talking left, right, politically, this is about making sure that we are giving people opportunity, giving them the skills, giving them the access to live fulfilling lives. And I don't think there is anything party political around that. I would hope that would be something that, you know, anybody who came into politics would support. Otherwise, I'd question why they were doing it. There may be disagreements in terms of some of the ways in which we get there, but certainly my focus is on that, and that will continue. And as an organisation, you asked there around the sustainability piece. You know, we are very much in the space of looking at the outcomes. So it's not just a case of, you know, how many people took part in Project X, but in actual fact, what were the outcomes? What impact did it have? And learning from that to see where we can expand, or if we need to change anything, what that looks like. And I think, you know, there's a big bit here around, I mean, I call it the cradle to grave approach. What are the key milestones along the course of your life where we need to make sure that we are spreading that opportunity as much as we can? So for the next year, the two focuses for us is, number one, around continuing to really strengthen the links with business. I've given you some good examples of what's happening already, but we want to see that go further. And then thinking about the key moments in your life. You know, we know all the evidence is there. If you start school and you haven't got the numeracy, and you haven't got the linguistic skills, and you haven't got the behavioural skills, and that whole piece around school readiness, that obviously is going to make it so much harder. But not just when you're 5, also when you're 15. So, you know, getting in at the right age and supporting people at the right age to ensure that they can be as you know, as fulfilled as their potential allows them to be. And I think, you know, that approach, regardless of which party somebody is from, I think it's the common sense approach. If I'm honest, I don't see how, if you're really focused on those outcomes, that you could do it any other way.
And that, I mean, the work that you've done, I know you said business engagement and inclusion is one of the real priorities for the next year, but you've already done a huge amount of this, and you know, you might be surprised actually by the level of support that you'll have from businesses, just because they agree, they will broadly agree with the agenda. They can see the wider value of it. They can see how it's in their potential long-term self-interests too. But you know, businesses aren't disconnected from communities and places. They're part of them, and so why wouldn't they want them to succeed and thrive? So I suspect, you know, if anybody came and threatened the Essex programme, you might find you've actually got quite a homegrown army to defend it.
I think we have, and I don't know why anybody would threaten the Essex programme, because you know, there is evidence there that it's working. Of course, we can always learn and we can do things differently, but there is a lot of good stuff there that's happening. And I think, you know, the approach we have taken about this joined up piece, we're all sat around the table together. And you're right, businesses, very often the people that own the businesses or work in them, they're residents, they live in that area. We've all got to live somewhere, haven't we? We're all part of a community. And for most people, that's not a million miles away from where they work. So, we are speaking to businesses, but we shouldn't forget that many of the people in those businesses are residents as well, and they are very invested in it. Their kids have gone to the school up the road, etc. They want to see their area thrive and have the opportunities as well. So I'd be very surprised if anybody did come after what we're doing. I think they'd be on a bit of a hiding to nothing, if I'm frank. And I think we would certainly have some very strong supporters in our corner to demonstrate the good that we're doing.
And I think there's such an impressive track record here. It's almost sport for choice in terms of what examples to use. And that's where I think actually having, exactly as you've done, having a clear set of priorities year by year that you can really drill into and embed and then show what you've done and then move on to the next one. This is not a short-term fix. This is not a single intervention. This is, in effect, growing a partnership that's going to help the county change for the better over the next 20 and 30 years.
Absolutely. And we've tried to, as I say, not just work with partners, but think about that national agenda as well. So I gave the example earlier about the HAF programme, where we've put the additional resource in for the half terms. But another example around that is that the government's made the announcements about what I think are really positive changes in the space of childcare. But of course, we all know that there are challenges in that sector around retention and recruitment. And we did quite a bit of work around trying to understand that a bit more. And it's actually much more than you may think at face value. There are some barriers to people who didn't get their English or Maths GCSE. They cannot move on to the next level, so they're actually precluded from moving into management positions. And there is a severe shortage of management positions. So we started to unpick it and think, well, that to me seems an obvious thing, because if you can get people who have already started in that sector to secure those additional qualifications, that then opens up opportunities for them as individuals to go on and take on more senior positions. But that's also to the benefit of the wider population, because of what the sector needs in terms of expansion and growth and skills. We need the right people in the right places. So we launched the Poppins bursary last week, obviously named after Mary, and to give the opportunity for both individuals and settings to come forward and get some additional support. So it's £1.4 million that we've put into it. It's about supporting people to get those qualifications, for people if they want to move into childminding, if an existing setting wants to expand. They're all covered in the new bursary. And as I say, it's not just an initiative that we've come up with as a standalone idea. It's trying to dovetail into that broader agenda. And, and personally, I'm a huge supporter around doing more in that space, because of what that can unlock for families and, particularly women, to then return to the workplace and be more sustainable and independent as a family.
And the more that I think about it, the more I think that childcare in particular is a national infrastructure project and a national infrastructure deficit. And we should be thinking about childcare in the same way we think about transport infrastructure and other types of investment, because it's one of those key enablers. And I chaired a commission for the Fabian Society last year, and every region of the country where there were inequalities, access to jobs or lack of access to jobs because of childcare problems was either the top or the second top issue that everybody said needed to be addressed. So I think absolutely spot on there. And as you say,
unequivocally, I mean, I've lost count how many people, whether it's personal connections or more generally, the number of people that have said that childcare is a barrier to them. And that's why you very often see it's normally women, not exclusively, but they'll go back to work 2-3 days a week rather than full time, because maybe one grandma can have them one day, and they can just about afford nursery one day a week, or whatever that looks like for each family. But the point is, it's just made so much harder. And that's why I think the announcement's a very positive one from the government. But of course, you have to have the workforce behind that, and that's where we saw our role as the council. What could we do to work with the sector to make that vision and that commitment from central government a reality on the ground here in Essex?
So in the last couple of minutes, please, can I sort of ask you a bit more personal question here? Because I was really struck at the Essex event when you spoke last year, just how passionate you were personally about this agenda. And it's really inspiring actually to hear you talk not about this is what must be done? Because often when somebody gets to know an agenda well, they then start telling other people how to do it. But one of the things that comes across in this is that you've still kept that mindset that we're here to enable, not do on behalf of. So how have you found it over the last year, given the growing complexity of this? And what have you learned personally over the last year that you think you're proud of?
Oh, a good question. How have I mean, I've loved it. I've loved it the last year because it's, you know, because it has been so varied. And I think there's a massive learning curve, as there is in anything, around looking at what others are doing and you know, recognizing what's already there. And as my mother-in-law from the northeast would say, shy bairns getting out. So what have I learned? Well, I've learned to go and ask people. And I go along to the different events and I say, you know, have you thought about this? And we have got people who have signed up to it. And, you know, the husband and wife couple that I gave you the example of earlier, that's exactly what I did. I could hear what they were talking about more generally. They'd given a presentation, thought, I think I've got your measure and I think I'm pushing at an open door here. And I went and asked them. And I think, you know, sometimes just being in a conversation with people and just pushing it to the next step, having the confidence to just say, you know, have you thought about, and this could really make a difference. You know, sometimes we go along to these things and we either speak ourselves as politicians, you'll know that, or you'll sit there and hear a speech. But really, what do we get on the back of that? And it is around the networking and having those conversations and encouraging other people to be part of it. So I would certainly say what I've learned is to ask, to step up and ask, but also to just be really mindful of what's already out there, because there's a lot that's going on. It's just a lot of the time about linking it together.
What do you think has been the biggest hurdle to progress over the last year?
Probably the ambition and the rush to do it all. You know, there is so much in this space. There isn't just one thing that you need to do, and it is about keeping it focused. So, you know, there are times when people come up with an idea, whether that's internally or externally, and we just don't have the capacity there and then to do it. And, you know, there is a piece there, absolutely, around making sure that we remain focused, that we know what we want to achieve from this year. We've had some really good discussions internally. The team all know that it's about driving up those business connections, and you know, that's the course we're on, and that's what we're kind of pursuing. But that does mean at times that we have to either say no or just plant something over here for another day.
And there's a really good saying that I sometimes use when I'm mentoring new leaders, which is, you know, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And It sounds to me as though Essex is on a journey which is going to take you a long, long way, because you're taking people with you on that journey.
And you have to do that for sustainability. I mean, that this just would not be sustainable if other partners were not involved in this, and if they weren't driving some of the stuff and some of the initiatives as well. And, you know, I think, you know, never underestimate the power of, you know, us as a local authority. We have that platform, but how you can big up and support others in that space is huge, and it goes a long way. And I don't know if that's always maybe respected as much as it should be. It doesn't have to be about us. It doesn't have to be about our name on it, but we can use our platform to encourage others to do it.
Louise, as always, it's hugely inspirational talking to you about this, and I very much hope that we can have another conversation in a year's time and reflect back on year 3 of the work. But for now, thanks for all your leadership in this space. Thanks for such an inspiring conversation today, and all the best for the year ahead.
Thank you very much, Nick. And if you haven't read it yet, Reaching New Heights is our new Levelling Up Year 2 report. So I'll make sure you get a copy.
And we'll make sure we can get a link to that on the podcast as well.
Perfect.
Louise,
thanks
very much. Good to see you.
Nice to see you. Bye-bye.